A monumental point in history that is often overlooked is the 80 Years' War, which is composed of the Dutch War of Independence and the 30 Years' War. In this video, I will summarize the major events in the Dutch War of Independence from 1568 to 1609. This conflict would be heavily influenced and characterized by its religious nature. Against the odds, the Dutch would struggle for decades to ultimately achieve its independence. Few remember that Spain, under King Philip II, controlled parts of France, Belgium and Netherlands in the 16th century. Their claim was based mostly on their military strength. From 1568 to 1648, Europe would see the Dutch War of Independence and European powers fight over the right to freely practice their religion. The conflict would see Spain, who was pro-Catholic, seek to impose Catholic rule over Protestant and Calvinist territories. Spain, with its large influxes of gold and silver from the Americas, was able to wage wars all across Europe during the 80 Years' War. At this time, Spain was the superpower of the age. The first 40 years was composed of the Dutch War of Independence from 1568 to 1609. The war possessed heavy religious influence for the aforementioned reasons and would see the Calvinist and Protestant Dutch northern provinces struggle against the pro-Spanish and Catholic southern provinces. Despite facing the superpower of the time, the Dutch would launch continuous rebellions, behind figures like William of Orange, in an effort to secure their independence. Eventually, the United Provinces of the Netherlands, or Dutch Republic, was formed after decades of struggle. I have included a timeline to make the events easier to follow. I will take a moment, so you can review. From 1568 to 1572, William of Orange launched two unsuccessful raids with the help of the Schism, who were Dutch, Calvinist mercenaries with land and sea forces. The Schism's intervention, partly because of their Calvinist faith, were a large contributing factor in sparking the revolt against the pro-Catholic Spanish rule. In 1573, with the help of the Schism, the provinces of Holland were secured against Spanish rule and converted to Calvinism. By 1576, all of the other provinces joined the revolt. In 1579, the northern provinces formed Union of Utrecht in opposition to Spain. The same year, the Spanish began to exercise their military strength and political influence, which in part led to the weakening of the Dutch Union when the Roman Catholic Walloons left the Union. These provinces left the Dutch Union and entered the pro-Spanish, pro-Catholic Union of 1579, which included many of the southern provinces. 1580 to 1604 would see the Spanish exact heavy defeats on the Dutch. In 1584, the Spanish had William of Orange assassinated. This was a significant blow to the Dutch resistance, as William had been a staunch advocate for independence and formidable leader. From 1584 to 1585, the Spanish laid siege to and subjugated Bruges, Ypres, and Ghent and sacked the cities of Brussels and Antwerp. Despite the heavy string of losses, the northern Dutch provinces still had one advantage, which was the ability to flood part of the provinces by opening the dikes, and the assistance of the Calvinist Schism mercenaries. These forces had superiority over the Spanish at sea, so they could resupply and regarrison strongholds when possible. In 1588, under the Duke of Parma, the Spanish were able to subjugate all of the southern provinces and seemed poised to root out the Dutch dream of independence. However, during this time, Spain had also involved itself in conflicts against the French and English. The gold and silver from the Americas allowed Spain to field armies that could counter each nation, but these conflicts gave time to the Dutch northern provinces to gather their strength and launch counter-offensives. The major battle in the Dutch War of Independence was the Battle of Ostend from July 1601 to September 1604, where the Spanish laid siege to the last Protestant stronghold in Flanders. The siege lasted 3 years and is often referred to as the New Troy for its staggering length. In 1601, the leaders of the Spanish Netherlands arrived with 20,000 troops commanded by Albert of Austria. In contrast, the garrison at Ostend numbered 3,500 and were severely outnumbered. The garrison forces were under the command of Francis Vere, an Englishman. By the winter of 1601, the defenders in Ostend had been significantly weakened by starvation, fatigue, and disease. In order to stall an imminent Spanish attack, Vere parleyed with the Spanish, which allowed much-needed resources and soldiers to be ferried into the garrison by its allies and Guizen. This allowed the garrison at Ostend to repel Spanish attacks, and by 1602, the defenders now numbered 7,000. The defenders at Ostend were able to repel attack after attack, and their staunch resolve weakened Spanish morale. However, in 1602, the Spanish were reinforced by 9,000 Italian troops under Ambrogio Spinolo. The Italians were able to use sappers and mines to eventually bring down the garrison. In 1604, the defenders finally surrendered to the Spanish, but after a significant price. The Siege of Ostend is often seen as the largest and bloodiest conflict in the Dutch War of Independence. Its staggering 3-year siege has not been replicated in military history. Despite the loss of Ostend, the Spanish were war-weary and faced 3 hostile enemies in England, France, and Dutch provinces. In 1609, the 12-year Truce was signed, which recognized Dutch independence. After 40 bloody years of conflict, the Dutch, against the superpower of the time and overwhelming odds, had achieved its independence. Unfortunately, this peace would be short-lived as the religious nature of the conflict bled into the 30 Years' War, which saw much of Europe engulfed in a colossal struggle over religious dominance. Aftermath and significance. The Dutch War of Independence is noteworthy because it was the spark that led to the religious wars that would see over 30 million Europeans displaced from 1568 to 1648. These 80 years would go on to shape Europe and the world forever. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, share, or subscribe, as it would be a great help and notify you of new content.